My 19-year-old son, Julian, publicly renounced my name, signed the papers with a smirk, and posted it online with his stepfather Marcus cheering him on. 3 weeks later, his college fund vanished. The lake house locked him out. His stepfather got arrested by the FBI. Turns out choosing the wrong father is consequences. Snorts, expensive ones. Looking back, I could have stopped it. Maybe if I'd fought harder for custody when Isabel left. Maybe if I'd been less focused on building towers and more focused on building my boy's character. Maybe if I paid attention when Julian started calling Marcus the real provider at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. But I didn't. I kept my head down, kept working, kept believing blood was thicker than whatever poison she was dripping in his ear. My name is Charles Harrington. I'm 58 years old, and I spent the last 30 years building commercial real estate across 3 states. Started with a single strip mall outside London, turned into 18 properties worth north of $200 million. Not bad for a kid whose father pumped gas for a living. I built it all for one reason, to leave something behind. To give my son a foundation he'd never have to worry about. Funny how that works out. The spring fundraiser seemed harmless enough. One of those charity luncheons at the Riverside Hotel, white tablecloths, and people writing checks they'd never miss. I went because my company was a sponsor. Julian came because Isabel dragged him, probably hoping to parade him in front of her society friends. She'd remarried a year ago to Marcus Thorne, some tech consultant who made his money flipping failing startups and wore suits that cost more than they should. I was standing near the silent auction table when Julian walked up, 19 years old, wearing a blazer I didn't recognize, haircut styled just like Marcus's. He didn't say hello, didn't even look at me at first, just stood there jaw tight like he was psyching himself up for something. Then he said it. I don't want your last name anymore. The words landed heavy. People nearby went quiet. Forks pausing midair. I turned to face him fully, keeping my expression neutral. Behind him, Isabel stood with Marcus. Both watching like this was a performance they'd rehearsed. I let the silence sit for a moment before I spoke. Say that again, I said calmly. Julian's chest puffed up. He'd practiced this. New dad says, "You're a loser," he said louder, clearly wanting the table next to us to hear. He's the man I look up to now. I want his name. I'm done being a Harrington. Someone gasped. One of Marcus's friends actually clapped slow and mocking. Isabel smiled. That sharp little smile she always had when she thought she'd won something. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd carried for 3 months. Ever since Julian stopped answering my calls. Ever since I saw him tagging Marcus in posts with captions like learning from the best, I'd had my attorney draft it just in case, hoping I'd never need it. I set the envelope on the table between us and unscrewed my pen, slid both toward him. Fine, I said. Sign here, son. No anger, no pleading, just clarity. Julian hesitated for maybe 2 seconds. Then he grabbed the pen like it was a trophy and scrolled his name across the bottom of the page. His signature was big, confident, slanted like he couldn't wait to be done with me. He thought he was cutting ties. He had no idea he just cut himself out of everything I'd built. I folded the paper, slipped it back into my jacket, and raised my water glass. To Julian, I said evenly, "May you get exactly what you just asked for." So people laughed nervously. Others looked confused. Marcus smirked, but I wasn't playing. I turned and walked out of that ballroom, leaving my son standing there holding a pen that had just signed away his entire future. Because that wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a trigger. Clause 19.2 of the Harrington Family Trust. Voluntary name severance. I'd built that clause 5 years ago when I saw the writing on the wall. When Isabel started poisoning Julian against me, the storm had arrived, and I'd already locked the doors. The drive home from the Riverside took 23 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't call anyone, just drove, hands steady on the wheel, watching the city lights blur past. People think moments like that require rage or grief or some big emotional release. They don't. Sometimes clarity feels like ice water, cold and sharp and absolutely still. I pulled into my driveway, a modest 3-bedroom in a neighborhood that didn't scream money. Never saw the point in showing off. The house was paid for. The lawn was maintained, and it had everything I needed, including the office where I kept the real work locked away. I went straight to the safe. Biometric scanner, 12-digit code, retinal confirmation. Overkill for most people, but I wasn't most people. Inside sat the Harrington Family Trust Charter, a leather-bound document that had taken 2 years and 4 attorneys to perfect. My grandfather started it during the Korean War as a way to protect assets from government seizure. I'd modernized it, turned it into something far more comprehensive. I flipped to Section 7, Subsection C, Clause 19.2, Voluntary Name Severance and Beneficiary Disassociation. The language was precise. Any direct descendant who formally renounces the Harrington surname through signed declaration forfeits all trust benefits, holdings, voting rights, and access to family-controlled entities. No appeals, no exceptions. The clause required public witness and documented intent, which Julian had just provided in front of 40 people with cell phones. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the trust management portal. 3-factor authentication. Fingerprint. 6-character rotating passcode. Security question. What endures? Answer. The foundation. Julian's profile appeared. Status. Active beneficiary. I clicked Edit. A drop-down menu appeared. I selected Void Clause 19.2 Invocation. A red warning box appeared. This action is permanent and irreversible. Confirm with Master Authorization Code. I typed the 16-digit code I'd memorized 5 years ago. Hit Enter. The system processed for 3 seconds. Then Julian's status changed from green to gray. Inactive. The trust's automated protocols began cascading through linked accounts. College fund access revoked. Healthcare proxy terminated. Property inheritance queue removed. Voting shares and Harrington Development Corporation redistributed to the legacy reserve pool. All of it gone. Not because I was angry, because he'd asked for it. My phone buzz. Text from my attorney, Gabriel Moreau. Saw the notification. Are you certain? I typed back. Executed per his request. Witnesses present. Documentation complete. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then understood. I'll prepare the formal notices. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. No music, no television, just me and the weight of what I just done. People would call it cruel. They'd say I was punishing my son for being young and stupid. They'd be wrong. I wasn't punishing him. I was honoring his choice. He'd stood in front of everyone who mattered and declare that my name, my legacy, my 30 years of work meant nothing to him. Fine. Then he'd get exactly that. Nothing. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon, sat on the back porch, and watched the stars. Somewhere across town, Julian was probably celebrating, thinking he'd finally cut the chains. He had no idea the ground beneath him had just disappeared. Tomorrow, the real reckoning would begin. Julian's social media explosion started around midnight. I wasn't following him anymore. But Clara, my 16-year-old daughter from my current relationship with Eleanor, showed me the post the next morning over breakfast. Dad, Clara said quietly, sliding her phone across the kitchen table. You need to see this. The first post showed Julian standing on Marcus's boat, arms spread wide, champagne bottle in hand. Caption, finally free from dead weight. New name, new life, new. Father who actually gets it. Hashtag no regrets, hashtag upgrade complete. 300 likes in 6 hours. Comments from his friends range from supportive to mocking. One kid wrote, your old man must be crying, LOL. Another, respect for cutting toxic people out. I handed the phone back to Clara without a word. Aren't you going to do something? She asked. Clara had always been sharp, perceptive in ways Julian never was. She understood consequences before they arrived. I already did. I replied, pouring coffee. Now we wait. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Clara had seen enough of how I operated to know that silence wasn't the same as an action. By Monday afternoon, the first tremor hit. Julian called me. First time in 4 months. I let it go to voicemail. He called again 20 minutes later. Then again on the 4th attempt, I answered. What? I said flatly. Dad, there's something wrong with my college portal. His voice had that edge of panic people get when reality starts catching up. My tuition payment got rejected. Says my scholarship's been revoked. I sip my coffee. I need you to fix it. There's some kind of error in the system. The Harrington Education Fund just disappeared. It didn't disappear, Julian. It was reallocated. Silence then. What do you mean reallocated? You signed a name severance document, I explained calmly. The trust operates on a namesake provision. No Harrington name, no Harrington benefits. You're no longer eligible for any fund administered under the family trust. That's insane. You can't just do that. I didn't do anything. I corrected. You did. You renounced the name. The trust responded according to its charter. Clause 19.2. You should have read what you signed. This is because I hurt your feelings. His voice cracked into anger. You're going to ruin my education because of some petty grudge. This has nothing to do with feelings, I said evenly. You made a choice. Choices have weight. You're learning that now. Mom said you'd try something like this. Marcus is going to talk to his lawyers. Good luck with that. Everything's airtight and witnessed. You declared it publicly, signed it voluntarily, and celebrated it online. No court will overturn a valid trust provision when the beneficiary actively requested exclusion. He hung up without another word. Clara looked up from her homework. How long until he figures out it's not just a college fund? Give it a week, I said. Maybe less. That night, Isabel called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. You're making a huge mistake, Charles. Julian is your son. You're destroying him over nothing. Call me back. We need to fix this. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Some bridges you burn. Others you dismantle brick by brick so thoroughly that no one can ever rebuild them. The formal notice arrived on Wednesday, not to Julian, to Isabel. Certified mail, signature required, delivered at 10:47 a.m. According to the tracking, my attorney, Gabriel, had drafted it exactly as I'd specified, professional, factual, and completely devastating. Isabel called me 6 times in the first hour. I ignored everyone. Then she tried Eleanor's number. Eleanor, who'd been with me for 3 years and understood exactly how I handled family warfare, declined the call and muted her phone. Finally, at 2:15 p.m., my office line rang. My assistant, Darlene, put it through without asking. Charles, Isabel's voice was ice wrapped in gasoline. We need to talk now. I'm listening, I said, leaning back in my desk chair. Julian's trust fund is frozen. His health insurance was terminated. The Lake House access codes don't work anymore. And I just got a letter from your attorney saying he's been removed from Harrington Development Corporation succession planning. That's correct, I confirmed. This is insane. He's 19 years old. You're punishing a teenager for being angry at you. He's an adult who made an adult decision, I replied. He publicly renounced the Harrington name, signed legal documentation confirming it, and posted celebration videos online. The trust responded according to its governing structure. I didn't punish him. He disqualified himself. You know damn well he didn't understand what he was signing. Then he should have read it or asked or thought before he acted, but he didn't because Marcus told him I was worthless and you agreed. So he committed publicly and legally. That signature is binding. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, could almost see her trying to find an angle, a crack in the armor. Finally, Marcus says we can sue. Prove you coerced him. Go ahead, I said calmly. I have video from 4 different angles showing Julian smiling, laughing, and signing without hesitation. I have his social media posts celebrating the decision. I have witnesses, including Marcus, who will confirm he acted voluntarily. You'll lose, spend a fortune on legal fees, and embarrass yourselves publicly. But please proceed. Another silence, longer this time. There has to be a way to reverse this, she said. And for the first time, I heard something I hadn't heard from her in years. Fear. There is, I said. Clause 19.2 includes a reversal protocol. Julian can petition the Family Advisory Board for reinstatement. Requires unanimous approval from all 7 members, a written apology submitted to the trust administrator, and a 5-year probationary period where he carries the Harrington name without access to benefits. That's humiliating. That's the cost of walking back a public renunciation. He burned the bridge. If he wants to rebuild it, it won't be easy, quick, or painless. You're doing this because I left you, Isabel said. Venom returning. This is about punishing me through him. This has nothing to do with you, I replied coldly. You left 5 years ago. I moved on. Julian's decisions are his own. He chose Marcus. He chose to reject my name. Now he lives with that. It's very simple. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Isabel's voice came back shakier than before. Charles, he's your son. He was, I said. Now he's Marcus's problem. I hung up before she could respond. The crash came from an unexpected direction. Not from Julian, not from Isabel, but from Marcus himself. 3 weeks after the severance, my corporate intelligence contact, a woman named Sharon, who specialized in financial background checks, sent me a file I hadn't even requested. Thought you'd want to see this. Her email read, attached was a 47-page report on Marcus Thorne's business history. I opened it over morning coffee. By page 3, I was no longer drinking. Marcus wasn't a successful tech consultant. He was a professional con artist with an LLC and a LinkedIn profile. His startup acquisitions were companies he bought for pennies during bankruptcy proceedings, stripped of assets, and flipped to naive investors. 3 of his ventures had been investigated by the SEC. 2 had resulted in settlements. His current company, Thorne Ventures, was hemorrhaging money and hadn't closed a legitimate deal in 18 months. But here's what made my blood run cold. He'd done this before, twice. Both times to divorced women with substantial assets. Both times he'd married them, gained access to their finances, and left them broke within 3 years. One had filed a restraining order. The other had disappeared from public record entirely. Isabel had no idea she'd married a predator. I forwarded the file to Gabriel with a simple note. Secure this. We may need it. By Friday, the situation escalated. Clara came home from school with news that Julian had been posting increasingly erratic content. Depression quotes. Vague threats about people who abandon family. One post showed him sitting in a car at 2 a.m. with a caption. When you realize the people you trusted were playing you all along. Dad, I think he's in trouble, Clara said quietly. Like real trouble. I looked at the post she showed me. The kid was spiraling, but not because of me. The timestamps told a different story. Most were posted between midnight and 4 a.m. Comments from his friends had shifted from supportive to concerned. One wrote, Bro, you good? Call me. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Julian, but his voice was different. Hello, scared. Dad, I need to tell you something, he said. Marcus is not who Mom thinks he is. I sat up straighter. Keep talking. He's been asking her to co-sign business loans. Big ones. Says they're investments, but I've seen the paperwork. They're personal debts. He's underwater. Dad, like really bad. And he's using her credit to stay afloat. How much? I asked. I don't know exactly, but I heard him on the phone last week threatening someone about missed payments. And Mom's been crying a lot. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. I close my eyes. Even after everything, Isabel didn't deserve this. Julian, listen to me carefully. Don't sign anything Marcus gives you. Don't co-sign. Don't witness. Don't even touch the papers. Understand? Yeah, he said quietly. Dad, I'm sorry about everything. I was stupid. We'll talk about that later. Right now, I need you to do something for me. Get copies of any documents you can find. Loan applications, bank statements, anything with Marcus's name on it. Don't let him know you're looking. Can you do that? I think so. Good. Send them to Gabriel Moreau. You remember him? Your lawyer? Yeah. Do it tonight if you can. And Julian, stay away from Marcus as much as possible. If he asks you to sign anything or do anything financial, call me first. Doesn't matter what time. There was a long pause. Then does this mean? It doesn't mean anything yet, I interrupted. One problem at a time. Give me those documents. He hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, knowing that Marcus's collapse was coming. The only question was how much damage he'd do on the way down. The documents arrived in my email at 3:47 a.m. Julian had photographed everything. Loan applications with Isabel's forged signature, credit card statements showing $180,000 in debt, correspondence from collection agencies, and a particularly damning email chain where Marcus discussed extracting maximum value before the divorce. He'd been planning to leave her broke all along. I forwarded everything to Gabriel with a note. Prepare legal options. Fraud, forgery, potential theft. I want this airtight by 9 a.m. Gabriel called back. Charles, this is federal wire fraud territory. If even half these signatures are forged, Marcus is looking at serious prison time. Does Isabel know? Not yet, but she's going to. I drove to Isabel's house that afternoon. Unannounced. The gate code still worked, which told me Marcus hadn't bothered changing it. Arrogance or stupidity, didn't matter which. Isabel opened the door wearing a bathrobe at 2 in the afternoon. Her eyes were red, her hair unwashed. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Charles, what are you doing here? We need to talk, inside. Now. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The house looked different. Furniture missing from the living room. Empty spaces on walls where artwork used to hang. Boxes stacked in the hallway. What's going on? I asked, gesturing at the boxes. Marcus is consolidating assets, she said mechanically. Streamlining for a new venture. He's liquidating before he runs. I corrected. Isabel, sit down. I opened my laptop and showed her everything. The loan fraud, the forged signatures, the previous marriages, the SEC investigations. Her face went from confusion to horror to something that looked like physical pain. He said it was investment capital, she whispered. He said we were building something together. He was building an exit strategy using your credit, your assets, your name, and when there's nothing left, he'll disappear, just like he did to the others. She stared at the screen, tears running down her face. How long have you known? 3 weeks. I've been gathering evidence. Isabel, you need to freeze your accounts immediately. File a police report. Get a restraining order. This man is dangerous. Where is he now? She asked. According to Julian, he left this morning. Said he had meetings in Chicago. Probably moving money offshore. She broke then. Not crying. Something deeper. A kind of collapse that happens when you realize you've been played. I didn't comfort her. That wasn't my job anymore. But I didn't leave either. I'll have Gabriel file the necessary paperwork, I said. Fraud charges, asset recovery, divorce proceedings. You'll need a separate attorney, someone who specializes in financial crime. I can recommend 3. Why are you helping me? She asked. Because Julian asked me to. And because you're Clara's mother, and Eleanor would want you to do the right thing. But mostly because watching Marcus go to prison will be satisfying. She almost smiled at that. Almost. What about Julian? She asked. The trust. Can you? One thing at a time, I said. Let's deal with Marcus first. Then we'll talk about what comes next. I left her with Gabriel's contact information and a list of forensic accountants. As I drove away, I saw Marcus's Escalade pull into the driveway. He was back early. I made a note to have Gabriel accelerate the filing. Marcus's time was running out. I found Julian at the Riverside Botanical Gardens on a Tuesday morning. He was volunteering, wearing a dirt-stained shirt and work gloves, pulling weeds from the perennial beds near the entrance pavilion. I'd gotten a tip from Clara who'd been tracking his social media. His posts had changed. No more party photos or arrogant captions, just quiet pictures of plants and sunrises. I watched him work for a few minutes before approaching. He moved methodically, carefully separating unwanted growth from the flowers. There was something different about him. Humility, maybe, or exhaustion that looked like growth. Julian, I said. He turned, startled. Dirt smudged his cheek. He looked thinner, older somehow. Dad, I didn't know you came here. I've been volunteering here for 12 years, I replied. Usually on Thursdays. You picked Tuesdays. He nodded slowly, understanding. He'd chosen a different day deliberately, trying to walk a path without intersecting mine. Can we talk? He asked quietly. We sat on a bench near the koi pond, the same one where my grandmother's memorial plaque was mounted. Julian had played here as a child. He used to feed the fish, laughing when they swarmed for the pellets. I've been coming here for 8 weeks, he started. Every Tuesday and Saturday, 6 hours each day. I'm not doing it for credit or to show you or anything. I just needed to do something that mattered. I didn't respond, just listened. Marcus is in jail, he continued. Federal custody. They arrested him at the airport trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. Mom's a mess. The house is in foreclosure. She's staying with her sister in Pennsylvania. I know, I said. He looked at me. You helped her, didn't you? Got her a lawyer, filed the fraud reports. I did what needed to be done. Why? After everything she did, everything I did, I watched a heron land on the far side of the pond. Because helping her wasn't about forgiveness. It was about doing what's right. Your mother made mistakes, but Marcus was a predator. Nobody deserves that. Julian was quiet for a long moment. I found something in Mom's files after the FBI took most of the documents. Letters you wrote to me, one every year since I was born. I remember those letters. 19 years of them. Hopes, advice, stories about my own father. Things I wanted Julian to know when he was ready to hear them. I read them all, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Every one. You wrote about teaching me to ride a bike, about my first day of school, about the time I broke my arm, and you stayed up all night with me at the hospital. You wrote about being proud of me even when I didn't deserve it. He pulled an envelope from his back pocket. Worn, creased. This one's for my 18th birthday. You wrote about the trust, about why you built it. You said legacy isn't about money. It's about teaching someone to stand on their own foundation and then helping them build higher. A tear ran down his face. I threw that foundation away. I stood in front of everyone and said it meant nothing. I said you meant nothing. Yes, you did, I said simply. Can I fix this? He asked. Is there any way? I turned to face him fully. There's a process. Petition to the Family Advisory Board. Requires unanimous approval. You'd have to write a formal apology to the trust administrator. Then 3 years of probationary status where you carry the Harrington name, but receive no benefits until you prove you understand what it means. 3 years, he repeated, minimum. And Julian, that board includes your great-uncle Arthur, who fought in Vietnam and doesn't believe in second chances. Your cousin Helena, who built her own company from nothing and has no patience for entitlement. They're not going to make this easy. I don't want it easy, he said. I want to earn it back. However long it takes. I stood up, then start with the apology. Write it yourself. No lawyer, no help from me. When you're done, send it to Gabriel Moreau. He'll present it to the board. After that, it's out of my hands. Will you vote for me? Julian asked. I don't get a vote, I said. I recuse myself. This has to be their decision, not mine. He nodded, understanding. I started to walk away, then stopped. Julian, the volunteering. Keep doing it. Not for the board, not for reinstatement. Do it because it's right. That's the lesson you missed. I left him sitting there by the pond, surrounded by the gardens he was helping to maintain. Whether he'd find his way back, I didn't know, but at least he was trying. The advisory board meeting took place 4 months later in the conference room of Harrington Development Corporation's main office. 7 members sat around the table. My uncle Arthur, my cousin Helena, 3 second cousins who held positions in the family business, and 2 independent trustees appointed by the original charter. I sat in the observation section, not at the table. Eleanor was beside me, and Clara had asked to come. She wanted to see how these things worked. Gabriel Moreau presented Julian's petition. The written apology had been 17 pages, handwritten, no legal polish. Julian had detailed every mistake, every moment of arrogance, every word he'd spoken that had betrayed the family name. He'd included documentation of his volunteer work, references from the botanical garden supervisor, and a letter from Isabel acknowledging her role in poisoning him against me. Arthur read the entire thing aloud. His voice was gravel and judgment. When he finished, he set the papers down and looked around the table. The boy disgraced us publicly, Arthur said. Celebrated it. Posted it online for the world to mock. Now he wants back in because his life fell apart. That's not remorse. That's desperation. He's been volunteering for 6 months, Helena countered. Hasn't missed a single day? The garden supervisor says he's the most dedicated volunteer they've had in years. That shows commitment. To what? Arthur shot back. To getting his trust fund back. To growing up, Helena replied. We've all made mistakes. The question is whether he's learned from them. The debate continued for 90 minutes. Some members wanted to reject the petition outright. Others argued for a conditional approval with extended probation. Clara watched everything, taking notes like she was studying for an exam. Finally, Arthur called for a vote. All in favor of granting Julian Harrington's petition for reinstatement under 5-year probationary terms, raise your hand. 4 hands went up. Helena, 2 of the second cousins, and 1 trustee. Opposed. 3 hands. Arthur, 1 cousin and the second trustee. Gabriel cleared his throat. The vote is 4-3 in favor. However, the charter requires a 2/3 majority for reinstatement after voluntary severance. 4 out of 7 is 57%. The petition is denied. The room went silent. Clara grabbed my hand. Helena stood up. I'd like to propose an alternative. Julian can reapply in 1 year if he continues the volunteer work, maintains employment, and demonstrates sustained commitment. We revisit. That gives him time to prove this isn't desperation. Arthur considered this. Fine, 1 year, but he doesn't get to keep reapplying every month. 1 more shot. That's it. Everyone nodded. Gabriel made notes. Julian Harrington's petition is denied. Eligibility for reapplication granted in 12 months. Contingent on demonstrated good faith effort. Probationary term upon approval, if granted, extended to 5 years. After the meeting, Clara and I walked to the parking garage together. That seemed harsh, she said quietly. It was fair, I replied. Julian threw away something precious. Getting it back should be harder than losing it. Will he make it? That depends on whether he's working for reinstatement or working to become someone worthy of it. The board will know the difference. We drove home in silence. Later that night, Julian sent me a text. Just 3 words. I'll keep trying. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Julian's second petition arrived 11 months later, not 12. He'd submitted it early, which told me he either hadn't learned patience or was so committed that he couldn't wait another day. I hoped it was the latter. This petition was different. 32 pages documenting every volunteer hour, every gardening certification he'd earned, every life change he'd made. He'd enrolled in community college, studying horticulture and business management. He'd moved into a modest apartment, paying rent with wages from a landscaping job. No help from Isabel, no shortcuts, no Marcus's money in the background because Marcus was serving 4 years in federal prison. The board convened in November. Same room, same 7 members. This time, Helena presented the petition instead of Gabriel. She'd been mentoring Julian quietly, something I learned only when she mentioned it during her presentation. He's worked 847 volunteer hours in 11 months, Helena said. The Botanical Gardens promoted him to crew leader. He's training new volunteers. He completed 2 college semesters with a 3.7 GPA while working 40 hours a week. And he's done all of this knowing he might not get reinstated. Arthur interrupted. Has he posted any of this online? Made a show of his redemption? No, Helena replied. I checked. His social media has been dormant for 10 months. Last post was an apology to everyone he'd hurt. After that, silence. That's interesting, Arthur admitted grudgingly. The deliberation lasted 2 hours. Clara sat next to me again, now 17, and preparing for her own college applications. She'd used Julian's story in one of her essays about consequences and redemption. Got accepted to Stanford. Finally, Arthur called for the vote. All in favor of granting Julian Harrington's petition under 4-year probationary terms with quarterly board reviews. 7 hands went up. Every single one. Arthur looked directly at me. Charles, you're invited to speak now. As Julian's father, the board wants your perspective. I stood up slowly. All eyes turned to me. Julian made a choice that hurt me deeply, I said. But more importantly, he hurt himself. He threw away something he didn't understand because someone told him it was worthless. The last 11 months, he's been learning what value actually means. Not inheritance, not handed down wealth. The value of work, of commitment, of showing up when nobody's watching. I paused. If you reinstate him, make the terms clear. 4 years of probation means 4 years of proving he understands what the Harrington name represents. Not money, not buildings. Integrity. If he can demonstrate that, then he's earned his place back. Not because he's my son, but because he's become someone worthy of the legacy. I sat down. The room was quiet. Gabriel documented the decision. Julian Harrington's petition is approved 7-0. Probationary period 4 years with quarterly reviews. Full. Benefits suspended until successful completion. Trust voting rights restored at 50% capacity. Full reinstatement contingent on advisory board approval at the end of probation. After the meeting, I walked to my car. Julian was waiting in the parking garage, standing by his 10-year-old Toyota. He looked nervous. They told you? I asked. Helena texted me. For years. Probation. He exhaled. Thank you. Don't thank me. I didn't vote. And don't thank the board. You earned this by changing who you are. The real test starts now. I know, he said. Dad, I want you to know something. Even if they'd said no, I would have kept volunteering, kept working because you were right. Legacy isn't what you're given. It's what you build. I looked at him. Really looked. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement had been burned away by consequences. What remained was someone who might actually become a man worth respecting. Good, I said. Then you've already learned the most important lesson. The rest is just showing up. I drove home. Eleanor had dinner waiting. Clara was studying for finals. Life moved forward as it always does, regardless of who we lose or find along the way. 15 months later, I was pruning roses at the botanical gardens on a Thursday morning when I heard footsteps behind me. Julian, wearing his crew leader vest, carrying a flat of native perennials. Morning, Dad, he said. We'd graduated back to Dad about 6 months earlier. Earned, not assumed. Morning. Those for the new pollinator garden. Yeah, Clara designed it. Did you see her plans? Clara had interned with the gardens over summer break before starting at Stanford. She created a comprehensive native species restoration plan that the board had approved unanimously. Julian had volunteered to implement it. I saw them. She's got your great-grandmother's eye for design. We worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Julian said, I testified at Marcus's sentencing hearing last week. I set down my pruning shears. How'd that go? He got an additional 2 years for witness intimidation. Tried to threaten Mom into withdrawing her fraud complaint. Judge wasn't amused. He paused. Mom's doing better. She's working as an office manager in Scranton. Small company, decent people. She asked me to tell you thank you for getting her the fresh start. She did that herself, I said. I just made some introductions. Still, it meant something. We finished planting the perennials. As we cleaned up, Julian pulled an envelope from his back pocket. My quarterly review is next week, he said. Helena thinks I'm tracking well for full reinstatement after year 4, but I want to give you something first. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten, addressed to the Harrington Family Trust. I read it standing there in the garden. It was Julian's formal commitment to the family legacy. Not a legal document, just a promise to honor the name he'd almost lost, to build something worth passing on, to teach his own children someday what value really means. At the bottom, he'd written, a name isn't given. It's earned every single day by the choices we make and the character we show. I'll spend the rest of my life earning this one. Thank you for giving me the chance to try. I folded the letter carefully. The board will appreciate this. I didn't write it for the board, Julian said. I wrote it for you. Something tightened in my chest. Pride maybe, or the slow healing of something that had been broken for a long time. Keep showing up, I said. That's all that matters. 2 years later, Julian completed his probation. The board voted unanimously for full reinstatement. He spoke at the ceremony, addressing the family, the trustees, everyone who'd watched him fall and climb back. My father built something remarkable, he said. Not just buildings or wealth, but a structure that protects what matters. I tried to tear that down once. I failed. And I'm grateful I failed because it taught me what I was really destroying. The chance to be part of something bigger than myself. He looked directly at me. Legacy isn't about what you inherit. It's about what you protect and pass forward. I lost that once. I won't lose it again. Clara stood next to me, squeezing my hand. Eleanor smiled. The family clapped. Later at the reception, Julian introduced me to someone, a young woman named Leah, sharp-eyed and practical, who ran a sustainable architecture firm. They'd met a green building conference. She reminded me of Eleanor. Grounded, no nonsense. The kind of person who made you better by proximity. Leah's helping me design the community garden project, Julian explained. We're converting that empty lot on Roosevelt into an education space for urban farming using Harrington Development Resources. I asked, using my own money and labor. But yeah, once it's proven viable, I'm proposing we replicate it across 3 cities. Corporate social responsibility meets community investment. I looked at him. He was 31 now, still young, but not naive anymore. He'd learned what I'd spent a lifetime trying to teach. That real power comes from building, not from taking. Good, I said. Keep me updated. That night, back home, I pulled out the old family charter. Updated Julian's status from probationary to full beneficiary. Active, restored. The name had been tested. The structure had held and the legacy continued, not because of blood or birthright, but because someone had finally learned what it meant to earn it. Some bridges can be rebuilt, but only if both sides are willing to do the work.